Hello and welcome along to the Crafty Crew podcast. I'm Kinger. I'm joined by Mark.
Hello.
Nally.
Well.
And Walty.
Evening.
Essentially, we spent so much time drinking craft beer in the first two lockdowns. We said we'd be a bit more productive this time and maybe create a podcast about craft beer. So here we are. We're all a little bit nervous. We've no idea how it's going to go. But come along on the journey and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as we do. So this week's beer the beer style is lagers. A world-renowned lager is something like a Stella that I think everyone will know. But we're going to try a few other lagers that we've got our hands on for this week. Nally's going to give us a few interesting facts about lagers to start us off. So away you go, Nally.
Yeah, so lager is one of the two main styles of beer. There's lagers and ales, and the main difference between lagers and ale is that lagers tend to be bottom fermenting yeast. So there's two main strains of yeast used to ferment beer. Lagers use the bottom fermenting yeast. The term lager itself comes from the German words to store. So years ago, they used to store all the beer in caves, which kept them cold, and it was cold storage. And then around the middle of the medieval times, around 1500s, there seems to have been a second strain of yeast, and that's the bottom fermenting yeast that was kind of found, and this was then used for lagers. So from here then, there's a load of different styles of lagers. There's Pilsners, Helles, Marzen, Bock. There's dark lagers, light lagers, plenty of different colours. So when electricity and refrigeration became a lot more accessible to people, lagers then kind of took over, and immigrants over to America, they brought the lager style with them. So that's why lagers ended up being the most popular style in America. And from there, when refrigeration and electricity became more common, they were able to mass produce it on a bigger scale. And that's probably why it's the most common beer in the world today.
The only information that I have on lagers is that National Lager Day is the 10th of December. So we've missed it. But we can always aim to have a celebration next year.
Just to point out, Kinger, the 10th of December last year was Thursday in a lockdown, so I can guarantee I did not miss it.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
A fair point. We were probably all involved in it.
Yeah, we probably were somewhere. Yeah. Mark, have you any information for us about lagers?
Yeah, so just to mention your previous lager there, Stella. So Stella is the most popular, not only lager in the world, Stella is the most popular beer in the world in terms of sales now. So maybe not in terms of what people actually like, but it sells the most. I suppose that's what's important. It was so it has an interesting story behind it as well. So it was first launched in 1926 as a special Christmas time beer. So Stella Artois, it's named after the Artois region of northern France. So it's a Belgian beer, but this region borders France. The Artois region, it borders Belgium. So it was released in 1926 as a Christmas beer. The Stella means star, so it's a reference to the Bethlehem star. So it was, as I say, it was a very popular Christmas beer, and its popularity was such that the brewery decided to release it as a standard lager. And by 1930, it was being distributed all around Europe. From there, it's just continued to grow. So for anyone out there with religious connections, Stella's probably one of the more religious beers that you could drink. And every time you drink it, you can think of baby Jesus.
Stella's the go-to for religious people, so is it?
Yes, it is. So I believe that all priests would drink Stella when available.
Oh, jeez.
I heard the recent petition to replace the confirmation wine with Stella. That was the true blood of Christ at the time.
Very good.
It must also just be noted that Stella is owned by the same company that owns Budweiser. So I believe the Catholic Church will accept Budweiser as an alternative when Stella is not available.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Walshy, I'm sure you have some riveting information for us about lagers.
I'd expect nothing less. The only one I have is lager beer in general is the most dominant beer style throughout the brewing world, except for in England where ale is the primary style of beer consumed.
It's not like England to be different from everybody else, is it, Walshy?
No, imagine.
Do you think they probably were? Do you think they were? Lager was the most dominant, and just kind of maybe in the last 5 years, they decided they might try ales instead, and just get away from the whole lager situation and go towards ales.
Natalie, I have a question for you. You might be able to answer me. Ales in general, would they be in the same kind of family as lager, or to be completely different altogether?
So essentially, ales are brewed with different yeast. Lager yeast and ale yeast are different strains of yeast. And the lager yeast is bottom fermenting and ale yeast is top fermenting. That's the main difference between them.
I don't think Walshy was listening to the start of the podcast.
I heard him talking about, but
You shots fired across your bow there, Walshy. You weren't paying attention. Just own up to it.
Too busy looking at the can, so he was.
Well, look, without further ado, let's get into the first of our beers of the week. So as I mentioned, we're talking about lagers this week. So the first one we're looking at the first one we're tasting this week is it's the White Hag, and it's their Helles style lager. I'm a sucker for looking at a can and like enjoying the aesthetic of the design of the label and stuff. So like this looks like it's going to be refreshing before I even taste it. I'm hoping, but I've no idea. So crack them open and let's see.
Okay. So I guess looking at this, for all our listeners, we're going to be using the kind of standard beer judgment criteria, which would be aroma, colour, taste, and mouthfeel. And the order we're going to do it in is not the order I said it in. We're going to assess them on colour, aroma, mouthfeel, and taste. And so, Kinger, you're somebody who knows a bit about this brewery. Do you want to walk us through the colour of this and the aroma?
Look, I'm not going to lie. I am someone who pretends to know what I'm talking about when it comes to beers and anything craft beer related. I just like the taste of it and how things look. I know the White Hag are based in Sligo. Am I right? Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure. It comes in at 4.5%. I mean, I think this style of lager like originates from Bavaria.
Very good, Kinger. I see you were able to read the 3 sentences on the side of the can.
Exactly. Yeah. You put me in the spot there, and I had to roll with it. Like, so what are your thoughts? Like looking at it, what do you think?
So for me, it's just the normal color of a lager.
Yeah, nice light.
Nice kind of almost fruity smell off of it, but not really a fruity smell, but just a nice aroma. I'm getting from it. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's not a heavy smell or anything like that. But then, like your lagers are it's not overpowering.
Yeah. In terms of the mouthfeel, then it's a little dry, maybe. Does anyone else get that?
Yeah.
For me, it's also a little bit fizzier than I'm kind of used to, maybe. But I'm sure that's the lager.
It's kind of like really crisp, nearly.
Yeah.
So it finishes quite quickly. It dissipates and stuff quite quick, but it's really crisp. It's really refreshing kind of beer.
I guess that's where the dryness is coming into it a little bit. But one thing I have to say when we move on to taste, Kinger, you said at the start that the can. So for anyone who doesn't know what this can looks like, it's kind of soft pastel yellow, orange, and blues. And it does look like it's got a nice little zigzaggy pattern. But yeah, refreshing is the word that you'd say the can brings to your mind. Refreshing is the taste I get off this.
Yeah.
It's actually really nice.
Yeah. Mark, you're not really a massive lager fan, I think. Are you?
No, so I'm somebody who has them fairly regularly, but lagers are my go-to beer after I've had 4 or 5 craft beers. So once my taste buds have been killed, I will start drinking lager because it's cheaper. And then I also don't miss out on the tastes of other craft beers.
What a compliment. Yeah. What a compliment. Once I've killed my taste buds.
I think that's the thing with lagers in general as well. They tend to be a lot less hoppy. So with ales and stuff, like you're talking about killing your taste buds, with ales and stuff, you tend to get a lot more of that hop flavor, which is a lot more dominant. So with lagers, they're just a lot cleaner. So they are. There's not as much. There's still flavor, obviously, but it's not as overpowering when you're having them. It's a lot more restraint on the palate.
Yeah, so I would agree. And I have kind of a couple of standard lagers I go to. One of the craft lagers I go to would be the Brown Bear ones from, you get them in Aldi and Tesco, but the Brown Bear Brewery. They're really nice lagers. They're gluten-free as well for anyone who's watching their weight. You can have 10 of them. There's no gluten in them. They're good.
They're good for you. It's really a health drink.
It really is.
A replacement for a health drink. I can imagine. Yeah. I could see that.
Walk into a Ben Dunn gym next month and you'll see a load of Brown Bear beside the protein shakes.
The only thing you'll see beside it.
Probably the only thing that would make me go to a gym as well.
So Kinger, right? Just for anyone who doesn't know, Kinger picked this lager for something for all of us to try. We hadn't had it before, but he picked it out of the shelf. I had a Rock Helles lager during the week. by the White Harbour Brewing Company. So it was a very similar name, and I thought maybe they'd be somehow related. Obviously, they're not. It's just a similar name, but it was absolute dirt. I couldn't drink more than 2 mouthfuls of it, so I was very anxious about this, that I was going to end up spitting it all over my keyboard.
I'd be of a similar vein to you, Mark. So generally, when I'm drinking beers now, it tends to be ales like IPAs and stouts even. And I don't tend to go for the lagers, but that's nice. That's refreshing. That's not, it's not. I often find with lagers, they tend to be a bit cat pissy. And this one isn't, which is a good advantage.
Yeah, for me, like, the more drinkable a lager is, the less the hint of cat piss. Most of the time it's there. But and anyone who doesn't have cats, you won't get this. But this is like the cat, you walk into a shed, a cat's been in for a week. And that's
the ammonia smell, isn't it?
Yeah.
One thing I'd say for myself, I'm usually, like Nally was saying, he's kind of more stouts and that kind of stuff. I'd be more of the kind of citrus IPAs for the most part, but obviously before it was all kind of lagers. But yeah, I honestly, if they didn't have a particular beer that I was after in the pub that day, or it was all out, I'd quite happily sit and drink that for the day, because it goes down very easy.
It's one of those ones that you could probably easily have maybe on a sunny day on a outdoor setting.
The more I drink of it just sitting here, it's very sweet, and I'm kind
It
of,
is.
I don't know how many I'd be able to drink in a row of this.
I think for me, because I'm so used to IPAs and different types of ales and stuff lately, like I remember when I started with, say, when I was 18 and having my first couple of drinks, shandies. I always enjoyed a shandy. It kind of reminds me of that for some reason. I think that's the sweetness, you know.
You enjoyed your handy shandies.
Was it a hand shandy? Yeah.
No, like
Down the back of Burgess Park. Shout out to Burgess Park, home of the Midlands hand shandy.
Can we try and keep a little bit of respect and
Bit of decorum.
A little bit of decorum would be great. Yeah.
That's my word of the day.
Okay, so look, we've all had a taste. We're all probably going to have a slight varying, some slight varying opinions on what we're drinking at the minute. So we have come up with a very scientific rating system for all the beers that we're going to taste. Lads, do you want to give any information or any kind of background about?
I wouldn't really say a background, but it did take us a good while to actually come up with particular names for each rating.
Yeah. The most amount of work that has gone into this podcast has been hour-long arguments about what the actual words we've decided to put in as this rating system are.
I'd say that's fairly obvious at this stage if you got this far.
So anyone who has any suggestions for improvements, and if you're listening to this and you liked our Facebook page, stick a comment under the podcast. Let us know if you think it's shit or if you think you have a better idea for it. And if we think you're right, thank you. And if we decide to use your suggestion, there might be a prize. And if your suggestion is terrible, we'll give you some online abuse. So thanks.
Yes, we'll take all of your ideas and then take all of the plaudits and ignore all your terrible ideas, essentially, which is a good plan.
I call it the Joe Rogan strategy.
Fair.
So we should mention we have a Crafty Crew podcast Untapped account as well. So as we rate each beer, we're going to give it a live rating on Untapped. And so you can kind of keep track on what we like and what we don't like. For
those out there who don't know what Untapped is, it's like the Facebook or Twitter of beer. It's an app that allows you to tag in any beers you try, add a photo, give them a rating, tag your friends. Very useful if you're into trying lots of different craft beers, as I commonly forget if I've liked something, but I know I've tried it. So having an Untapped means you can go back and check.
So usually when you're about 8 or 9 beers in, you're probably not remembering to be tagging any beers. I've done it many occasions.
The beauty of Untapped, though, is it gives you these little push badges. So you get a badge basically every time you check in a beer, and it's like freemium gaming, or those games that lure you into buying things.
Yeah.
And the gratification, you're like, oh well, I better have 6 more because then I get the next level.
So Untapped's rating system is essentially 1 to 5, but it's in increments of 0.25. So you can have 1.25, 1.5, 1.75, etc. We've just gone 1 to 5 for our own rating, and we've tried to come up with some pretty outrageous beer puns for this system. So number 1, so obviously 1 is you're not going back to that beer again, essentially.
1 is you're not going to even finish that beer. basically.
5 is like it's exceptional. There's nothing above this beer kind of job.
5 is Barney Gumble, hook it to my veins level.
Full on nectar of the gods, like.
Oh, I'm on board on that one. Yeah.
So 1 is unbearable. 2 is booze.
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 3 is beer. I mean, it's just beer. 4 is brutiful. And 5 is unbelievable, Jeff.
It's unbelievable, Jeff. Shout out to Chris Kamara. Other football commentators are available.
Fair.
Sorry, Ty.
So where are we putting the White Hag's Helles style lager?
Personally, I actually really enjoy it, and I would be between Just Beer and Brutiful. I'd be probably more closer to Brutiful, but that would be me.
I'm gonna lamp in with Walshy. I think he's right. It's in that kind of middling range, but for me, the more I drink, the sweeter it's getting, and that kind of means it's a bit Just Beer, because I don't know how many of these you can handle before your stomach explodes with fizz and gas. So I'm gonna say Just Beer.
I feel like you don't want to be drinking a drink that's going to have you swamped in like 3 or 4 beers. Do you know what I mean? Like you want to be able to kind of enjoy it over the course of a night, or that is, I think it's deceptively feels light, but I think it's a bit heavier, if that makes sense. So I would say it's very middle of the road. So it's beer. It's just beer. It's good. Like,
yeah. So I'd kind of be inclined to agree with you, Kinger. I think it's a nice beer. It's really nice for a lager, especially. I'm not the biggest fan, but it is really nice. But I don't think it's a 4. I think it would be a 3. I don't think you're going to sit and, you're not sticking on that all night. I think the fizz will have you creased within a few of them. Like, if you're trying to stick on that all night, I think you'd just be creased within about 5 or 6 of them. You're not spending the night on them. So to me, it's just beer. It's grand. There's nothing wrong with it. But
that's fine by me. I was kind of in between the two, but it's obviously a kind of decision between the 4 of us. So I'm very okay with that. I think it's above normal if you're thinking lager styles in comparison to the rest of them. That's kind of what I'm...
Yeah, I would agree, Walshy. It has definitely very, 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 very little trace of cat piss taste to it. And also, I think that, as you say, that it's a bit heavier than it seems. I think that's all the fizz. So maybe anyone drinking by a lake and if you're going for a swim, this might give you extra buoyancy when all that fizz gets in your belly. So from a scientist, extra buoyancy, drink the White Hag Rock Helles Lager.
I also think one last thing, like in the normal, especially kind of in Ireland, I suppose your big one over here, like Mark was saying earlier on, would be kind of your Budweiser. And if I kind of compared this one to Budweiser, I would drink this 100 times quicker than I would a pint of Bud.
Probably, yeah.
Because Bud, I found it has that kind of strong taste of it.
I'd be inclined to agree with you. I think it's there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's a nice beer. I wouldn't be on it for the whole night. It's just beer. It's not something I'd particularly go back to. But if someone's handing it to me, I'm never going to turn it down. Like,
fair.
Yeah.
So we're going middle of the road, 3 out of 5, just beer.
That's good.
It's a solid start. I think as our first beer to try together and rate. Nothing better than right down the middle. No one side or the other. Straight down the middle. Lovely hurling job. No offense caused by anything here.
I want to ask you guys a quick question before we go on to the next one. I actually didn't realize that my first initiation when it came to craft beers was actually a lager. And it's only when I looked it up today that I realized I remembered it's a lager. So it was Fisher's. I don't know if you guys know Fisher's beer. Fisher's lager. It came in a big tankard glass, big hand on the side. And the shtick that I was told about it was that they brewed the bubbles smaller so that it got you drunker quicker. And that's what I was told. But I drank it, and I obviously drank too much of it because I think it gave me one of the worst hangovers that I've ever had.
Did the person who tell you that they brewed the bubbles smaller so it gets you drunker quicker? What else did they tell you, Kinger? Because I don't think you should be trusting that person.
Is that the same person you bought those magic beans off, Kinger?
No, it's not. No, it's not the same person. Why am I the target? Like, I'm not going to be the target man for the rest of the podcast. Like, I'm not. I'm standing my ground.
I'd like to point out now, I've said nothing. It's the two boys that are verbally attacking you all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, Kinger, if you don't want to be verbally attacked, then kind of you need to be a bit clearer with your explanations. Is all I'd say.
Stop leaving us open. Stop leaving things open to interpretation. Okay,
All
phrasing.
I was
Phrasing.
all I was doing was telling you what I was told. That's all. So my original question was, what was your first step into the world of craft beers? Can you remember?
I can vaguely, and I wouldn't mind. A few years back, I was like, nah, craft beers, not for me at all. And in our local pub, and Nally kind of tested this, we used to drink one from the Carrig company, and I was drinking their Carrig Lager, kind of more so because it was a cheap bottle. It was like €3 a bottle. So NFL Sundays, let's say there was a bucket load of them drank. But me being obvious, they was like, oh, I don't like craft beers, don't like craft beers. And then once kind of Dead Center kind of came around, Nally brought me in, and it kind of went, yeah, Mark, be quiet.
Here we go with the Dead Center. Here we go.
To be fair, I did ask what was your first kind of step into the world of craft beer. If
Yeah,
they were
Mark.
involved, they were involved. It's as simple as that.
I'd like to just point out, while she went from telling us about his first craft beer, and then to years later, when another brewery opened that sold a different type of beer, it wasn't
years
his
later.
first craft beer.
It was like not even a year after that.
Yeah.
I sit corrected. Apologies.
So I'd say my first thing with craft beer is generally when we used to just be having beers up at the house with a few of the lads, we'd go in and we'd get a crate of Budweiser or a crate of Coors to split between us. I'd always just pick up one or two extra bottles. Not a clue what they were at the time. Just grab different things and see, sure, we'll try this, try that, see how they went. There's one I remember particular though, is it was a banana bread beer, and I think it was by Wells Brewery. It was a really good beer. It did what it said on the tin. It tasted like banana bread. It was a good beer, but yeah, I think that was kind of the first. That would have been the first kind of steps into the craft beer kind of side of things.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Kinger, I've actually been thinking about this in the last week as well, trying to remember my first exposure. And I'm 99% sure the first time I ever tried craft beer was in college. So about 9 years ago, I tried Hobgoblin. So it was after a house party. It's like 10 to 10, run down to the off license, let's get some more beer before it closes. And it was like a 4 for 10. And I got 4 Hobgoblin. And after I had about 3 mouthfuls, I gave the rest of them away. It put me off craft beer for ages.
Really?
I
Okay.
really didn't like it. Years later, then I came back and I started with the likes of Sierra Nevada, O'Hara's, Franciscan Well. So the kind of beers that were pseudo craft. So they were craft beers but became popular, got themselves into pubs. That's where I would have tried them. And from liking them, I just started buying stuff from my local off license and slowly got into it that way.
The other thing that I remember then after looking at Fisher's was Innocent Gun. Have you ever had Innocent Gun? I don't even know if it's a lager or an ale, but the one I was given was a rum cask. So like it blew my mind. You were drinking a beer, but there was this very light like heating in your chest, like you were drinking rum, or like it was bizarre. It was a bizarre feeling, but I think that was the one that really got me into it. Knowing that you could do so much different stuff with it. It wasn't just your typical beer, you know?
I've had some of them ones that have been like done in like whiskey barrels, or I did one that was fermented even with wine, and it was like, you know, they weren't bad by any means, but it was just really strange. Like my emotions were all over the place trying to drink them. I'm like, what am I drinking here? You
An
know,
emotional roller coaster.
it was. I mean, I had a cry and everything. I was so confused.
I really think it's the beauty of them, though, is that you can be drinking something that just looks like a normal beer, and the taste of it is completely removed from what you expect. And you're actually looking at it thinking, what the hell? How did they do this? Like,
That brings us to our second lager, our second beer of the week. And this one is Third Circle Trinity Irish Pilsner. So crack them open, lads.
Work will be fun in the morning.
oh wow, the smell of this. Even
Yeah.
just pouring it, it's a very strong smelling beer.
It's
Strong.
much stronger smell, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah, there's a much stronger smell of that. It's
Oh, wet
Is it a
carpet in a
lighter
nightclub
colour?
smell.
Well, I don't know if I go that far.
So it's Third Circle's Trinity Irish Pilsner. They're based in Dublin, and it's 4.4%. It's different to the White Hag's Rock Hella style lager in the sense that it's an Irish Pilsner. So, Nally, any information on the difference between the two?
Hellas lagers are from Germany. They're from around the Munich area in Germany, whereas Pilsner originated in Czech Republic. And the world's first Pilsner was a Pilsner Urquell. And that beer is actually still available now. It's still available to buy now. It's the world's first Pilsner, and it's what most other Pilsners have been based off.
It's actually really delicious. So anyone who sees it out there, pick it up.
It's crazy. So the Pilsner Urquell is the original. There's also a city near where this is brewed, and it's where the other Budweiser comes from. So I don't know if you've seen it. There's Budweiser Budvar. That's the original Budweiser. That's the original Pilsner that Budweiser.
There's still actually a current court case that's been going on for decades between the two companies over
Really?
the rights of it. Yeah.
I wonder who's going to win that one.
I mean, the town has, its name, so
Yeah, fair.
it's not like they're calling the town Anheuser-Busch or
Bond
InBev.
town. I probably should have kept some of the last one just to be able to compare, but is it a little fizzier or bubblier?
I think it was when it was poured out, but I think the head has kind of dissipated a lot quicker. So I
Yeah.
don't think it held the head as long as the other one.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In terms of colour, just to kind of start at the beginning, it's cloudier, I find, than the original.
Yeah, originally I thought it was kind of a lighter, but as it kind of settled, it definitely got a bit cloudier.
Just a quick one on the colour as well. So one of the kind of trademarks of a lager is that I know you're saying it's a little cloudier, but one of the trademarks of a lager is that they're inherently super clear, because the cold storage tends to crash out all of the proteins and drops them out of suspension. So they stay much clearer than, some of your like New England IPAs or hazy IPAs that are look more like orange juice as opposed to this.
Shout out to crystallization for all those science nerds listening in.
I am not one of them,
I don't
and I
know what
don't
you're
get the
talking about.
references.
Trust me, it's hilarious.
I do see the cloudiness, which is kind of, I think, very strange for a lager.
Can we talk about the aroma? Because the fucking stench off this thing.
I personally don't think
there's
it's...
a real bang off it. Yeah, no,
Uh,
there's a real bang off that.
Yeah, there's
Compared to the last one.
Yeah, compared to the last one, yeah. But I don't think it's as, I don't know, nuclear as Mark is trying to point out.
Well, the mouthfeel is basically the same. It's maybe a teeny bit drier. So for me, the difference is in the colour and the taste here. And I guess the aroma, but it's almost a staleness. It feels stale, it smells stale, it tastes stale. Like end of a night, 2:55, nightclub closing at 3 kind of vibes,
Yeah, it's probably a mistake to be comparing the two, like the previous one we had, but like this tastes like it's a bit more mainstream, like your Stellas, like your Buds.
It's not even that, it's just worse.
Yeah, I
wouldn't
would
go
just...
that fair.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go...
It is a different style as well, though. So the last one was Hellas.
True,
That's
yeah, true.
Pilsner,
Yeah,
so
that's a good
I don't
point.
think it's like for like, essentially. They're brewed, they're
Yeah.
different processes to brew in. Like,
Yeah.
so I think the Pilsner is a decoction mash as opposed to just a lagering process. It's an extra step in it.
That's fair.
It's very interesting that there's different processes to brew things, but in the end of the day, the process that I drink things is the same. And I can assure you I applied the same process to these two beers, and there is a massive difference in my enjoyment level.
Yep, that's a very valid point,
That's
to be fair.
That's a great way of putting it, that I have one process of drinking beer and it's not going to change.
yeah.
Everything's
beer,
been
bad beer.
standardized on this podcast.
So we've spoken about the aroma. Have we spoken about mouthfeel?
Not a little. So for me, the mouthfeel is very similar to the last one. It's still kind of crisp and dry. It leaves pretty quickly. There's not a whole lot left behind, mouthfeel wise. Taste is there. That lingers for a bit.
Yeah,
so
I
it does.
think there's a little bit more to it than the hell is all right.
Yeah, I think
Taste.
it kind of sticks around a bit longer than the Hellas. There's kind of more to it. It might be just there might be a bit more hops in it than in the Hellas, which kind of sticks it to the palate that bit longer than.
Yeah, for me, it's that there might. Yeah, I can kind of get the more hops, but there's also this kind of like mouth smacking grating I'm getting off of it. Like, when you swallow a fly and you're like trying to get it back up.
Yeah. Is it a bitterness? Is that like?
I don't even think it's bitter for me. It's just a stale taste.
Okay.
I'd go with that, Kinger. Maybe it is kind of a bitterness, but I get what you're saying, Mark. How it's kind of a stale taste. So this would be, it's not the worst, but it's these kind of style of lagers would be the ones that I wouldn't be a bigger fan of. The Hellas, I kind of prefer because they're that lighter kind of, they're that lighter flavor, and that lighter kind of beer, whereas the Pilsners seem to be a bit kind of heavier or something.
Well, as someone who's been to Germany for a long weekend, I can safely say I'm an expert on German brewing styles, and this isn't up to scratch. So maybe we move on to the rating then. I think everyone will know where I'm leaning with this, but it's not going to be
5?
very high.
Gone
Do we
straight
have our
for
first
the
5, do we?
unbelievable.
We have our first 5. Five minus 3 for me. I think this is a booze. This isn't very good for me.
Yeah.
Stale taste. I won't ever be buying this again. If I have the option of not drinking and drinking this, I'd probably still drink it, but I think about it,
Yeah, because that'd be just rude.
Yeah. So for me, this is a beer where if you're in a spot where you
Sorry.
don't really have much choice, fine, but it'll never be a thing I'm going to choose again. It's not even in Untapped, so I'm going to have to add it to give it a bad rating.
Okay. That's a kick in the teeth, isn't it? You have to add it to Untapped. And actually looking at the can, they have the Untapped URL in there as well. But the fact that you have to go and add it to give it a less than ideal
I'm just trying to
rating
see if I can
isn't
find
great,
it
is
under any other name, but it doesn't seem to be coming up. Third Circle don't even have it.
So I've just logged into Untap as well to have a quick look there, and I found it immediately without any hassle.
I just found it.
So like Facebook, it's
No,
takes
too
a bit
late.
of getting used to, I suppose.
Too late, Mark. Too late.
Some people.
I suppose, Nelly, you are an expert on Untapped now at this stage.
Mm.
I'd like to say that I'm competition, but
So are we deciding then that
Booze,
it's 2
the
out
Third
of 5?
Circle Irish Pilsner.
Booze.
Your
I'd
beer
be
is
kind
bad
of-
and you should feel bad.
so like with the Hellas,
No.
I was kind of between the 3 and the 4, whereas in this one I would be between the 2 and the 3 because I did enjoy the Hellas a lot more. But I don't know. I feel like booze would be a bit harsh as well.
Okay.
But then I wouldn't have it as good when we had Hellas at just beers, so it would be below that.
It's nice of you to stick up for
Yeah.
for Third Circle, Trinity Irish Pilsner. That's really really nice of you to stick up for an independent craft brewery. But to quote a famous philosopher, your beer is bad and you should feel bad.
I hope if the Third Circle Brewery ever happens to listen to this, that they don't take that personal.
What you
just
tried,
on
what you
that,
tried.
the Third Circle, they do have some good beers. It's not just this beer. They have quite a variety of beer. And I have tried some of the other ones which are far better than this.
Of course you have.
They have a pale ale which is
look,
quite nice, but just as the Pilsner for me, I'd have to agree. It's just not my cup of tea or my pint of beer either.
That should go without saying going forward. Like we're tasting and reviewing the beer we're having at this moment. It doesn't speak about that particular brewery as a whole. It's just this particular beer. I'm sure we'll be trying some other stuff from the guys, and I'm sure we will like them. But so have we decided on 2 out of 5 in booze?
For Mark's sake, if we do happen to try Third Circle again, they'd want to step up their game because they have a hill to climb.
Yeah, Walsh, you're dead right
They
there.
have to climb.
You're dead right there, Walsh.
Only way is
But I'll
up.
give them another 5 or 6 chances. Definitely.
Solid 5 or 6. That's very noble of you, Mark. Very noble.
Have you gone in to check their back catalogue on Untapped to determine if 5 or 6 is enough, or is that all they have out at the minute?
I was
think-
just on their website here, and it said Mark is banned from all future beers. That's strange. Didn't expect that. It was very quick.
They're potentially cutting themselves out of a lot of consumption per week there. I don't think they'll stick with that for very long.
Pretty sure between myself and Ali and King will kind of make up for that.
I would
So
hope
just
so, yeah.
just to wrap it all up for the rating, we're going to give this a 2 out of 5. And as it's a booze beer, it gets a big boo from all of us. So 1, 2, 3, boo.
Boo.
Oh yeah, be the last man to get the word in.
I was saying boo earns.
Look, just before we finish up, then, lads, I want to ask you one more quick question. Seeing as the ratings weren't super for Third Circle's Irish Pilsner, does one bad beer from a brewery put you off the rest of their catalogue, so to speak?
A bit, I think. Sometimes I have been reluctant, but it doesn't. I don't know if it necessarily turns me off. If I see it again, I'm like, oh, I don't know. but I will try it, and then I can kind of decide from there.
For me, it kind of does the opposite nearly. Where if I have a bad beer from a brewery, I may seek that brewery out again and just try a different style of theirs and see if it was just so I know for myself and be like, was it just that style they didn't make well, or is it just that they're not making good beer for me? So I'd kind of be the opposite. I try and seek them out just to try a different style and see maybe it's just their style of brewing that I'm not a fan of, or if it's just that particular beer.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't put me off. And even if it wasn't something like this that's maybe not great but not too bad, I'd try it again, because with craft brewing, different batches can even change in their taste, or they could improve. For me, if I were to try another Third Circle brewery beer, which I probably will in the near future, I will just be hyper aware of what I'm drinking. So as opposed to just like opening it up and seeing it, I'll be like, okay, this is this kind of beer, and I'll maybe look into it a little bit before I drink it to kind of really scrutinize it. And then I do the same as sec a third time. But I think for me, if I had 3 different beers from a brewery, and it's happened that I don't like all 3, I just draw a line under it then, and I won't go back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 3 would be, if you have a hat trick of bad beers from a brewery, you're not gonna. You can let them keep the.
You're not going to go back.
You can let them keep the game ball. You can let them keep the game ball at that stage and just walk away.
Absolutely fair, lads. That brings us to the end of our lager episode. How do you feel about having episode 1 under the belt?
It's definitely good to get that first one out of the way.
10 more seasons. 10 more seasons of Crafty Crew episodes.
10 more seasons.
Sure, we can find enough beers.
It's all about that Szechuan Crafty beer. It's all about that Szechuan Crafty beer, Kinger. Gotta get that Szechuan Crafty beer.
Okay, well, look, as I mentioned earlier, you can find our officially rated beers on Untapped is it just under Crafty Crew podcast on Untapped?
Yeah, find us. So anyone who wants to follow this podcast, find us under Crafty Crew podcast. We have a Facebook page. If you go there, you'll find all of our links to SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, etc. And find us on Untapped at crafty_crew_podcast to follow all of our ratings of different beers.
Excellent. Okay, so next week we are looking at and tasting some sours, which I'm kind of nervous about because I haven't had too much experience with these. But we will be drinking Hopfully's Leg Swap and Founder's Green Zebra.
I will be popping my sour cherry, so it'll be the first time I've had one.
Your first one ever?
First ever sour.
I am looking forward to this.
That is not a good phrase.
Why am I the target man when he's saying stuff like that? Like, that's just not fair.
But I say at the end. I say it at the end of the podcast, so you all have to wait a week and you'll forget.
It's gonna stick in the mind for a while, I think.
That's it for this week's episodes on lagers. As I said, next week's episode is on sours, and if you want to try them with us, it's Hopfully Leg Swap and Founder's Green Zebra. So it's a goodbye from me, Kinger, Mark, Nally, and Walshy. See you next week.